did. I ran
We
for
were
a
inside, so I got it.
Oh, you got one?
Okay, we're inside.
Thank you.
What we're doing today on the National Day of Mourning is we're here to pay tribute to the victims of accidents and illnesses at work, and to renew our commitment as individuals, as employers, as workers, as government, with regards to health and safety at work. Every time that we hear that a man or a woman has been killed or injured at work, it actually makes our hearts sink. And every morning, as the Minister of Labour, I get an email telling me about accidents and incidents in the workplace, and I see the names of the individuals who have passed away as a result of just doing what we do every day, which is go to work. And it does make you pause, and it is my daily reminder of the importance of health and safety. And the news, as much as it is painful for us to see it and officials as bureaucrats, it's even more shocking for families, especially when it's someone who's dear to us. And unfortunately, I had that phone call as well, too. So every time I get that message, I'm reminded of the fact that, our family suffered the same issue too. And every day, we want to make sure that every time someone is injured or killed in a workplace accident, that families are traumatized and that lives are broken, and we shouldn't forget that. And we have one day a year, on April 28th, many thanks to Canada Labour Congress bringing it forward in 1991 and having the government pass legislation that we stop and we mark this on that day, because we can't forget about it. Just like Remembrance Day, we can't forget about this. But when you consider that the great majority of deaths and injuries and illnesses that are associated with work can be avoided, nothing can justify the sacrifice of these people's lives in the workplace. And that's exactly where the hope lies. That in fact, that workplace accidents and work-related illnesses, of which my brother passed away from, are not a matter of just blind faith. They actually have causes. And if they have a cause, then we can prevent them. And if they have a cause, then we can find solutions so that other workers and other families will not have to go through the same ordeal. Because we owe it to the victims of workplace accidents to learn the lessons of the past negligence and actively commit ourselves as employers, as unions, and as governments too, to work together to protect the lives of workers in general. We all aspire to a decent job that will allow us to live well and to contribute to society. But for a job to be decent, the job has to be safe. So let's remember that workplace accidents and work-related illnesses have a high cost. And as Kevin pointed out, it's not just human and social term, it's economic terms. And businesses and governments have to remember that too. Now, there has been progress over the years, but we had 1,014 deaths in Canada last year, and that's just simply unacceptable. More than one is, quite frankly, not even one is unacceptable, I should say. So I ask you to think about this, think about making prevention your daily commitments each and every day to work safely. And that really is the appeal that I bring today on the day of mourning, and not only to remember to mobilize in the cause of health and safety at work. Thank you very much.
Everything. Sometimes Labour has to strike to make a point, and they struck to save their lives, and there's no shame in that. The secondly is, I was sitting one day at a health and safety meeting, and I don't know if anyone here has ever been a certified member of a joint health and safety committee. Sometimes you just kind of start to sag and you give up. You say, like, what am I doing? And I looked around that room, and that room was filled with all of the history that has been taught to me in the labour movement. And it was filled with the souls and bodies of all those workers. And that's why we keep going. We don't give up. We can't give up. And I look at The other day I was taking my 2 young children, and today I'm kind of on call waiting for the next one to be born, and it could happen at any minute, so if I drop and leave, you'll know what happened. And I always wear the steelworkers button when they lobbied around the Westray mine, and I wear it with a lot of respect. My 2 kids, 3 and 5, looked at me, they said, "Dad, why don't they let the bird out of the cage?" I said, well, and I had to tell the story, and I think those of you with children telling stories to small children. And anyway, I talked about the mines and going down to the mines and how dangerous mine work was. And they looked at me and they said, well, why would anyone send someone down there to die? Why would you do that? And I said, well, they make money from the mines, the owners of the mines. My 3-year-old looked at me and said, what's more important, money or people? Money or humanity? And I said, it's humanity, and never forget that. And I think we need to remember that. We hear all the time that business takes great risks because they risk their money. Brothers and sisters, workers take great risks because we risk our lives to go down into those places and work. And I just want to leave you with 3 things that this book has given us. It has given us the right to know, and it's given us the right to participate, and it has given us the right to refuse unsafe work.
Decade or so, it has been a reality for thousands of families like mine. The day we, those left behind, will never ever forget. The day we wish we could go back and do the ultimate do-over. Just one more day, one more chance to say, hey babe, did you see them get married? Wasn't that great? Hey babe, did you know they bought a new house? Hey babe, did you see that baby being born? That's your grandchild. That's the day that a worker was killed because the workplace injury and death was not a priority. My husband and I had plans, and they were shattered the night he fell to the foundry floor. Night after night, he would balance precariously on a board straddled between 2 crane rails 30 feet above the concrete floor inside Dominion Casting, doing his job inspecting cranes and repairing them. August 28th, the board shifted and he fell. Just as he fell, our 20-year-old son, who was working in the foundry on the summer job, came around the corner just in time to watch his father fall. It was he sitting on the floor in Dominion Casting. On his cell phone, he called me and he said, "Hey Mom, Dad's had an accident and it's really bad." Normally, at 11 o'clock at night, the phone call would come from my husband, and he'd say, "Hey babe, I just called to say I love you, I'll see you in the morning." But everything changed that night. There were 2 reasons given for that accident. One, there was no D-ring for him to tie his harness onto. And the second reason, given by his employer, was simply because a board straddling the crane rail is far more cost-effective than renting a man lift. Sisters and brothers, my husband is only one of hundreds who have died because profit is the first priority for many corporations. This should never have happened to my family, and we must do more than pray that it never happens to another.
There's something wrong when this type of fatalities, these keep happening. And I'm raising these because we now have the 20th anniversary of the Westray mine coming on May 9th, 2012. The mine blew up May 9th, 1992. And 26 miners lost their lives at that particular time. And if there had been 500 miners underground in Stellarton, Nova Scotia, every one of them would have died. Every one. Because the opening of the mine was unrecognizable. And in fact, there's still 11 bodies buried underground that no one could get to. It was too dangerous to try and reach. So the monument in Nova Scotia is really the tombstone of 11 of those workers. And they think where they built the monument in Stellarton, Nova Scotia, is where those miners are buried. And I raise this because when those fatalities happen, there was an organizing drive to unionize that mine by the steelworkers. We received the calls. I'm a steelworker, as well as Secretary-Treasurer of the Ontario Federation of Labour. But we received those calls saying, come and organize us to save our lives. We know what's happening here. We know there's high levels of methane gas. We know the company has unplugged the methane gas detectors because they're annoying and they interfere with production. We know that the limestone isn't being shaken and spread around the mine to eliminate the risk of a coal mine gas explosion. We know the roofs keep collapsing. We know whistleblowers that try and talk about what's happening underground are fired because they're speaking out. We know there were mining inspectors that refused to go underground because they said it was too safe, but allowed the miners to go underground. So when that inquiry happened after that mine blew up, and not one corporate executive or management person ever was held accountable, and some, in fact, shame on them, refused to testify at the inquiry because they said they didn't have to and they were too busy. The labor movement took it upon themselves, led by the steelworkers, to lobby the federal government for 10 years to change the Criminal Code of Canada, to make sure there were provisions in there that would hold companies and their executives responsible if their negligence caused the death and injury of workers. Even the Rupert Murdochs and the Conrad Blacks can't get away with saying, if I direct a corporation, if I run a corporation, if I have staff of a corporation, I get paid by a corporation, no more will the public in North America sit back and say, you don't have to know what's going on in your workplace. So we have to make sure that when these executives are held accountable, they're now held accountable for health and safety and killing workers as well.